We are picking up, I believe, on page 1050 in the 11th edition with John Donne's Batter My Heart. Pretty sure we did quickly Death Be Not Proud on Monday, whatever the day that was. So this is another one of Donne's holy sonnets. Batter my heart, three-person God, for you as yet but knock, breathe, shine, and seek to mend, that I may rise and stand, o'erthrow me, and bend your force to break, blow, burn, and make me new. I, like an usurped town to another do, labor to admit you, but oh, to no end. Reason, your viceroy in me should defend, but is captive, and proves weak or untrue. Okay, now that's the end of the first 8 lines. There is a turn of sorts, a volta at the end there. Yet dearly I love you, and would be loved fain, but am betrothed unto your enemy. Divorce me, untie, or break that knot again. Take me to you, imprison me, for I, except you enthrall me, never shall be free, nor ever chaste, except you ravish me. This is one of Donne's sonnets that's called a penitential sonnet, based on the penitential psalms, Psalm 50, 51 being one of those. And the speaker is essentially saying what to God? Because this is an address to God. Notice you have kind of 3 parts in terms of the 3 quatrains, okay? Batter my heart, and the first quatrain, the first 4 lines, are all about, unless God breaks this person's heart, okay, this person will never be pure. Batter my heart, three-person God, for as yet you but knock, breathe, shine, and seek to mend. The knock, breathe, shine, and seek to mend, those all have biblical allusions. Behold, I stand at the door and knock, Christ says, okay? Christ breathes on the apostles before the crucifixion, okay, to receive the Holy Spirit. Shine, make thy face to shine upon me, okay, Old Testament prayer, and seek to mend, renew a clean heart, or renew a right spirit within me, David says in that Psalm 50 or 51, depending upon the version of the Old Testament you use. Why? That I may rise and stand, overthrow me. So that I may rise and stand, the implication is the speaker's already flat on the ground. So knock me down. Again, as it were. And bend your force to do what? Break, blow, burn, and make me new. Break, blow, burn. Those are all images from harvesting. What do you do with wheat? Old Testament, New Testament kind of period. Rub it in your hands to break away the whole of the wheat from the kernel of the wheat. That's the breaking. Blow, it blows the chaff away, blows the hole and everything else away, and all that's left is the grain. So break, blow, burn. Burning is the burning of the chaff, the whole, okay, not the seeds, and make me new. How to make me new? With what's left, the good part that is left, okay? Second image. Now we're not talking about the heart, we're talking about a town. And like a town that has been usurped, all right? Taken over by another. So I, like a usurped town, to another do, I labor to admit you. I want to admit you. I want to break down the town gates and let you in. But to no end. That is, I can't. To no end means to no kind of purpose. I'm unable to do this. Reason, your viceroy in me. And the speaker is saying, God, reason is your kind of like vice president in me. A viceroy is one who rules in place of, right? Roy there means king, vice king, right? Like a steward. So reason is your representative, your steward in me, and it should defend me. But it is captive and proves weak or untrue, okay? When we were talking about Hamlet, we were talking about, various Catholic and Protestant ideologies and thoughts and such. Okay? Dunn is Anglican. He is Protestant, but he does have a lot of Catholic kind of leanings. But here, in talking about reason, as being the viceroy, he's saying reason should serve God, but reason is proved weak, or untrue means false. Either it's not strong enough, or it's in the devil's, army, so to speak. Yet dearly I love you. That is, with my whole heart. And would be loved fain. That kind of means in return. All right? But am betrothed unto your enemy. So the heart, the person as a city, but now the individual says, I'm engaged, I'm tied to your enemy. So divorce me, untie, or break that knot again. That is, you, God, divorce me from your enemy. Not let's get a divorce, because the speaker and God are already kind of divorced. So break my relationship with your enemy, untie or break that knot again. To not tying me to your enemy. It could also be referring to the knot that metaphorically ties the soul to the body. So how do you untie that? Kill me, God. Go back to the beginning. Batter my heart, that I may rise and stand, overthrow me, knock me down. You could read that to be kill me. All right? So, divorce me, untie, or break that knot again. Take me to you. That's saying, reach out, grab me. For I, except you enthrall me, never shall be free. What does enthrall mean? To be made a slave of. Okay? To be captured and controlled. So those last two lines, except you, unless you make me your thrall, your slave, I never shall be free, nor ever chaste, except you ravish me. What does the verb ravish mean? Literally, it's rape. There's an article, very famous article among Dunn scholars about this poem written in the 70s or early 80s, titled Dunn's Divine Rapist. Because the speaker is saying, God, unless you rape me, because what does rape involve? Rape isn't just sex. It's total control. It's total power. And the speaker here is doing what? Submitting. Because the speaker is saying, unless you take full control of me, I will never be chaste. Chaste meaning pure. Notice the oxymoron or the paradox. How can you be pure if you're raped? How can you be pure if you're ravished? Right? Another meaning for ravish. Okay? Big difference is to be taken from the body, or kind of popular Protestant terminology today, raptured. Like many Protestants, Jesus comes again, there's going to be the rapture, all the followers of Christ will be taken up into heaven, all those who aren't are going to be left around here, cars will be crashing, planes, all that kind of. Unless you rapture me, I will never be chaste. All right? What's the speaker ultimately saying? Down here, I'm always going to fail. Down here, I'm always going to give in to temptation. Take me away, God. Take me away from this. Okay? Go from there to, lost my place. Better matter. Number 847. Page 847. Emily Dickinson, quite a bit different than Dunn. second. You got a little brief biography about Dickinson on pages 829 and following. Kind of encourage you to read it, just kind of interesting about her. Bit of a shut-in, kind of. 847, can't get my fingers to it right. Because I could not stop for death. Because I could not stop for death, he kindly stopped for me. The carriage held but just ourselves and immortality. We slowly drove. He knew no haste, and I had put away my labor and my leisure too, for his civility. Notice the punctuation there, okay? You got the dash between drove and he, and then no punctuation until to, comma. So you read from he knew to leisure to, without taking a pause. We slowly drove, and it's like everything in between is an apostrophe. We slowly drove for his civility. It's kind of how, that grammatically works. So, we slowly drove. He knew no haste, and I had put away my labor and my leisure too, for his civility. We passed the school where children strove at recess in the ring. We passed the fields of gazing grain. We passed the setting sun. Or rather, he passed us. The dews drew quivering and chill, for only gossamer my gown, my tippet only toll. We paused before a house that seemed a swelling of the ground. The roof was scarcely visible, the cornice in the ground. Since then, 'tis centuries, and yet feels shorter than the day I first surmised the horses' heads were toward eternity. Okay? How is death portrayed? Is death portrayed here like Marvel portrays death in To His Coy Mistress, and at my back I always see her, Time's winged chariot drawing near? Death is kind of portrayed here as like a gentleman caller. He shows up, little rap on the door, I'm here, milady almost. I kind of think a great image, if you were to kind of do like a little short film of this. Clark Gable in South Burns, Gone with the Wind, okay? Rhett Butler showing up in the carriage and opening the door, all that, okay? So, because I could not stop for death, he kindly stopped for me. Why can't the speaker stop for death? Why do you don't have to answer this, I kind of know the question, it's kind of rhetorical, but feel free to. Why do any of you not want to die now? You've got stuff to do, right? You have your lives there are things you want to achieve before then. The speaker is the same way, okay? But we're told, because I could not stop for death, he stopped for me. What's the implication? We might think we have tomorrow and all those other days, and it might be our time for death to stop for us. The carriage held, I love this couplet. The carriage held but just ourselves in immortality. Once the speaker gets in, what? Death. Okay? And all eternity ahead of the speaker. We slowly drove. Why? There's no time. Literally, there's no time once you die. Time is irrelevant at that point. All right? He knew no haste, and I had put away my labor and my leisure too. Why? Because the speaker's dead. There's nothing for the speaker to do now. The work, the pleasure, gone. All right? We passed the school. Notice the imagery of death like being in a carriage. So they're driving along. There's the school. There's the children playing, where children strove at recess in the ring. In the ring may refer to like a playground area, or it could be like they're playing Ring Around the Rosies. Okay? What does that little game refer to?
The Black Plague.
Black Plague. Okay? The achu, achu, we all fall down. That's in the midst of all the symptoms. You're sneezing, we all fall down, we're dead. Okay? It's amazing how something like that from 600 years ago can still be referenced in a little silly children's song. We passed the fields of great gazing grain. That is, we're now outside the town. We're moving out into the farmland area. We passed the setting sun. So we've gone beyond the sun, left the earth, or rather, he passed us. So we didn't pass the sun, but the sun passed what? Over us. The dews drew quivering and chill. Where does dew draw? Notice it drew. That's kind of like it came. Where does dew form?
Grass.
Sides of grass. It doesn't form on sides of trees. It forms on the grass. Okay? Where's the speaker?
Laying in the grass.
In the ground. Yeah, exactly. Okay? The dews drew quivering and chill, for only gossamer my gown. The gossamer, like if you go out early in the morning, you see dew. What else will you see? Pretty much everywhere in the grass, you're going to see little spider webs. That's the gossamer. That's the speaker's gown. What is covering the speaker? Okay? My tippet, that is my shawl, only told, which is a kind of fabric. We paused before a house that seemed a swelling of the ground. The roof was scarcely visible. This is a grave. The roof, the top of the grave, was scarcely visible. Why? This isn't a recently dug and used grave. This is a grave that's been there a long time, and the ground has started to settle. Okay? That's why the roof was scarcely visible, the cornice in the ground. What's the cornice? The cornice is the decorative woodwork at the top, like of a column, okay, that holds up something. It can be decorative woodwork along the fascia of a house. Here, what would be the decorative work for a grave?
Gravestone.
Gravestone. And notice, it is in the ground. Okay? What happens to gravestones over time? They sink. Gravity pulls them deeper and deeper and deeper into the ground. Since then, 'tis centuries. So from the moment of the beginning of the poem when the speaker dies to at this point, now hundreds of years have gone by, and yet it feels shorter than the day I first surmised the horses' heads were toward eternity. Why does it seem shorter than the day? Because when she first, or he, first surmised the horses' heads, first heard, that pattering, what? Outside time ever since then. Outside time doesn't mean long, and it doesn't mean it's instantaneous. So it's like, I've always been here, okay? Go from there to 859. All on that page, no. Runs over from 859 to 860. I know that he exists. I know that he exists somewhere in silence. This is 1080 in the 10th edition. I know that he exists somewhere in silence. He has hid his rare life from our gross eyes. 'Tis an instant's play, 'tis a fond ambush, just to make bliss earn her own surprise. But should the play prove piercing earnest, Should the glee glaze and death's stiff stare? Would not the fun look too expensive? Would not the jest have crawled too far? Okay? Notice, first sentence, I know that he exists. Know means what? Knowledge. It's not belief. It's like, I've reasoned this through. Okay? Short declarative sentence. And then we get, somewhere in silence, he has hid his rare life from our gross eyes. Who's the he? It's probably God. Okay? Somewhere, notice silently, he's hid his rare life from our gross lives. Rare, seldom seen, seldom experienced from our gross lives. What's meant by gross there? It doesn't mean foul or disgusting. It means vulgar. Not like a swear word. Vulgar meaning common, ordinary, everyday. The eyes we see everything throughout our existence every day, that most of us, take that back, me, won't cast aspersions on you, don't pay attention to what we see. Why? Because our eyes are filled with gross things, the stuff we see and experience every moment, okay? So, he's hid his existence, right, from our everyday, ordinary experience. Second stanza. 'Tis in instant's play. What is the instant's play? 'Tis means it is, right? What's an instant? It's momentary. It doesn't last. Like lightning. So what is that instant's play? What's going to come? 'Tis a fond ambush. What do you do when you ambush somebody?
Surprise them.
You surprise them, right? You have an idea where they're coming. You hide behind a tree. You hide behind a car. Boom, kind of a thing. Okay? This is a fond ambush. What's meant by fond? If you're fond of somebody, what does that mean?
You like them.
You kind of like them. Okay? What else can fond mean? An older meaning that's not really used very much today. Foolish. Okay? Foolish. Just to make bliss earn her own surprise. What's meant by bliss? And notice it's capitalized, as is the ambush. If you're talking military terms, what's the purpose of an ambush? Is it just to surprise the enemy?
No, it's to get the upper hand.
And kill him. 'Tis an instant's play. 'Tis a fond ambush, just to make bliss earn her own surprise. What might the speaker be talking about? How can an ambush lead to bliss?
Could it be like somebody accidentally, like an accidental killing, like someone dies
Okay.
off a ladder or something like that?
Possibly, you're close. You're on the right track. It is a death. Okay? What does the death lead to? Let's hold as an idea. For one who says, I know that he exists. Talking about God. Or maybe even Jesus. Okay? What does death lead to?
Heaven.
Another word for which, or heaven is a state of bliss. Perfect joy, perfect happiness. So, 'tis an instant's play. Death, the actual act of death, it's an instant. Yes, the death process might be long and drawn out, but when the person actually dies, it's momentary. 'Tis a fond, foolish, or loving, one of the two, ambush, okay, just to make. And notice the emphasis is the play and the ambush are to do this thing, to make bliss earn her own surprise. Like God surprises the individual. Because I could not stop for death, he kindly stopped for me. I was too busy, so death said, no, you're not. Go on to the next stanza. But, notice the but, should the play prove piercing earnest? The play, like this is a game almost. Should it prove piercing earnest? Why piercing? And notice that it's implied that the earnestness is what is piercing. The seriousness is what is piercing. Why piercing? I could be wrong. I think there's an allusion there. Christ being pierced in the side. Right? Should the glee glaze, what's glee? You know, there used to be a TV show. Glee, what was it about? Singers, a glee club. Okay, glee there, like in a glee club, means happiness, joy. The glad man in GL, spelled this way, it's G-L-A-E. The glad man in Old English was the joyful singer, the person who sang a song. The purpose of the song was to bring joy to the people, okay? But should the play prove piercing earnest, should the glee glaze in death's stiff stare? So notice now we are talking about death. What does that mean, glaze? If the glee does refer to joy, and if its glaze should in death's stiff stare, what's the implication? If the ambush is, let's go back to this word, rapturous, the person dies in a moment of extreme joy. What's going to happen to the eyes? They're going to stay open. That's the stiff stare. And the glaze is the glazing of the eyes. So if the eyes are glazed with joy, rather than like when somebody in the Harry Potter novels is killed with the Avada Kedavra curse, they always have this look of utter fright on their faces. So, should all that result in death's stiff stare, would not the fun look too expensive? What's the fun? The fond ambush.
The surprise of death.
The surprise of death. Notice, would not the fun, whose fun? The person dying's fun? God's fun. Okay? Would not the fun look too expensive? Would not the jest, a joke, have crawled too far? Go back for a moment. I know he exists. Somewhere in silence, he has hid his rare life from our gross eyes. That is, we don't see God in our everyday experience. And then you get the, 'tis an instant's play. What, again, goes back to, what is the instant's play? Because the fawn ambush and all that re-describes that. But what is it? It's God kind of lifting the veil momentarily. It's not an actual death, not necessarily. It can result to that. But it's God lifting the veil slightly and giving somebody an experience here and now of the joy to be found in heaven. Notice that brief glimpse, that brief lifting may be what? It may be too expensive. Because what might happen to the individual who gets the momentary glimpse of God? They die enraptured. God tells Moses, no man living may see my face. Because what happens if you do? You die. Okay? I think that's what she's getting at. Could be wrong. The next one is the caller, which I was going to try to put up, but the thing's not working. You've got the link to it. I've got it in front of me in another book. So I'll read it from here, and you can, read the poem again via the link. This is George Herbert. seems like we've done something else by Herbert already, but I can't remember what. The caller, spelled Collar. It's not in our textbook. I struck the board and cried, no more I will abroad. Okay? That's not how that should be read or recited. It's, I struck the board. The board meaning table. You know, room and board means you get a room and you get a table of food. Okay? And cried, no more I will abroad. I will abroad, it's an old 17th century way of saying, I'm out of here. I'm done. What? Shall I ever sigh and pine? Pine means moan and complain and whine and bitch about my life. Okay? My lines in life are free. Lines means like mooring lines on a boat. There's nothing holding me back. Or, you know, like this kind of line. Ball and chain, so to speak. All right? Nothing's holding me back. This person is not tied down. This person, more than likely, I'll say definitely, is not married. All right? Free as the road. And as J.R.R. Tolkien says about the road, it does what? It goes ever on. It's the, you know, one of the things Tolkien does in The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings is you never know what's going to happen when you step out your front door and go on the road. Because the road leads, as we'll read with Robert Frost in a few moments, as the lectures I posted, read with Robert Frost, it does what? It forks. And you have to take one of the forks. And that road goes on, and it forks. And what can you never do? You can never go back to the beginning. Because in that poem, you know, The Road Less Traveled, each one of those forks, it's not a literal road, it's a decision. You can't unmake a decision. So, he says, my lines in life are free, free as the road. Loose as the wind, think of Ode to the West Wind, right? Nothing controls the wind. As large as store, that is abundance. There's nothing limiting the speaker. Shall I be still in suit? And in suit means waiting on someone or something. And it could also refer to what the speaker is wearing. Not suit like we think of a three-piece suit, but like a uniform that's tied to a specific kind of employment. All right? Which we'll find out what that is at the end. Have I no harvest but a thorn to let me blood and not restore what I have lost with cordial fruit? That's a Petrarchan image about, you know, bleeding in love and all that kind of stuff. Sure, there was wine before my sighs did drown it. Another Petrarchan image. There was corn before my tears did drown it. Is the year only lost to me? And the speaker's kind of telling us, I've been doing what I'm doing, kind of the waiting in suit, for a year. Have I only lost a year? All right? Have I no bays, that is laurel wreaths, to crown it? What's meant by to crown it? To put like the capstone on, the ending of. Are there no rewards for what I've been doing? We don't know yet what the speaker's been doing over the last year. Okay? No flowers, no garlands gay, all blasted, all wasted. The all there doesn't necessarily refer to garlands and flowers. It refers to the year. Is the whole year simply gone? I mean, man, kind of interesting to teach this after COVID and the lockdowns, and because so many of us are like, that year and a half was, you know, was unreal, especially for students, because so many of you, you know, everything was done online, and a lot of people really don't like that or benefit from it. So he goes on. Not so, my heart. Notice that implies it's the heart that's speaking. In other words, this person is speaking from the heart, telling us, like in a soliloquy, what this person really thinks. Not so, my heart. but there is fruit, and thou hast hands. What's that referring to? That is an illusion.
Is that like Adam and Eve?
Yes, that's, oh. So what's the fruit? Temptation. Okay? There is fruit, and thou hast hands. Recover all thy sigh-blown age on double pleasures. Why on double pleasures? And what's the sigh-blown age? The last year, which has been spent in sighs, and the person is now looking back upon it and saying, did I waste the entire freaking year? So, recover what? That age on double pleasures. Why? I didn't have pleasure in that last year, so what am I going to do now? I'm going to double up on it. You've all heard stories, probably. I can send you links of someone, goes to the doctor, has a checkup, has blood work done. Doctor sends a letter later on. You've got cancer. You've got 3 months to live. And the person goes out and, tries to get everything done on the bucket list. I'm thinking of a specific example, a guy in Australia, 5 or 10 years ago. Goes to the doctor, blood work, you've got incurable cancer, and the guy goes out and he literally gets every credit card he can with the maximum limit. And he does a around the world cruise, and he buys just tons of stuff. He gets back from his cruise. I'm not kidding. This happened. He gets back from his cruise to find a letter from his doctor saying, oops, the results weren't yours. There was a mix-up at the lab. He ended up suing the doctor and the lab, and I think he won because of all the debt he incurred. Okay? And the doctor and the lab, I'm pretty sure, had to pay those bills rather than him. He was doubling up on pleasures because he thought, I don't have another 40 or 30 years to live. Okay? Leave thy cold dispute of what is fit and not. What does that mean? The dispute of what is fit and not.
Kind of like what's allowed to be enjoyed.
What's allowed, what's right, and what's wrong. Notice it's a cold dispute. So what is right and what is wrong? What one word does that encapsulate? Morality. The cold dispute of morality. Why is it a cold dispute?
So it's been around since the beginning of time.
Okay, possibly. It's up here. It's rationalizing. Oh, you shouldn't do this because X, Y, Z. Notice, it's not hot debate. It's not passionate. It's not from the heart. All right? So, forsake thy cage. What cage? The cage caused by the cold dispute of what is right and wrong. Forsake thy cage, thy rope of sands. Have you ever been tied up with rope? I have before, okay? Kids, things. Have you ever been tied up with a rope of sand? Sand wouldn't make very good rope, would it? Because it just falls apart. So what's the speaker saying about the person's rope that tied the person up before?
Is that the hourglass? An hourglass reference?
Possibly. What else? Notice it's thy cage, thy rope of sands. It's the cage the person made for him or herself. It's not a real rope. It's the cold dispute. It's the sense of right and wrong. That is, what kind of rope really? Is it going to stop you? If you see something, if you're like Rocket and Guardians of the Galaxy, that you really want, is that going to stop you from taking it? Notice, thy rope of sands, comma, which petty thoughts have made. What are petty thoughts? What's petty cash? Small, little amount. Your small thoughts have made the rope of sands, the cage, and made to thee good cable to enforce and draw. Cable is referring to the kind of rope that would be used to moor a large ship. I don't know if you've ever been to a port, seen one of those cruise lines that comes in, okay? The ropes that tie those suckers up, they're 8 feet in diameter. I mean, this is about 6 feet. That's good cable. That's not going to break. Notice the petty thoughts have turned the person's rope of sand into good cable. The petty thoughts are what keeps the person from, ooh, there's fruit. To enforce and draw and be thy law, the rules that you follow, while thou didst wink and wouldst not see. Didst wink and wouldst not see. At what? The fruit. What does it mean to wink at the fruit, but not see it? In our day of oversaturation of sex and sexuality and sexual images, I mean, you can barely get on one of these things without seeing something pornographic. Just show up as an ad, okay? And try to do what? Not going to look at it. You know, wink means briefly close the eyes, and would not see means desires not to see, but the wink implies it's still there, and I'm still seeing it. It's like taking a glance every second. Okay? I don't want to see it, and yet I do want to see it. Away. Take heed. That is, I've got to leave. I've got to leave now. I will abroad. I'm out of here. Call in thy death's head there. The Memento Mori. Reminder of death. Why do you think Hamlet, Act 5, begins how it does? Anybody remember how it begins? Grave diggers. Digging Ophelia's grave. And what do? They're throwing up skulls. And Hamlet holds Yorick, and he rhapsodizes on death. It's a memento mori. In Renaissance portraiture, almost all of them, if it's a famous person being portrayed, it'll be the person in his or her study or drawing room or something, dressed in their finery, somewhere in that image. Very famous one of Erasmus of Rotterdam. Somewhere in that image will be a skull. And the skull is there to say, you see the person now in his or her finery, in the full flush of life, you know, think to the virgins to make much of time, in that early youth and all that kind of stuff. But this is what we all become, the skull. So, get rid of that death's head. Tie up your fears. That is, you've got this rope of sand that you've made into good cable. Use it to do what? To tie up your fears. But if I do this, I'm going to get caught. No. He that forbears to suit and serve his need deserves his load. If you don't get what you want out of life, you get what you deserve out of life. Speaker is essentially saying, 17th century version, take what you can. Look out for number 1. And if number 2's in front of you, stab him in the back. Climb up that corporate ladder, one, knife in the back at a time, so to speak. But as I raved, what do you do when you rave? Not modern, dance. Not that kind of raving. What word do we usually put after the word raving today? So-and-so is a raving lunatic. Crazy person. But as I raved and grew more fierce and wild, at every word, that is, go back to the beginning of the poem, and at I, and struck, and the, and bored, methoughts I heard one calling. I wish I had James Earl Jones's voice, because this is where you want to use that voice. Child. And I replied, my Lord. At every moment that he's kind of speaking this, God says, child. What's the collar? C-O-L-L-A-R. Notice it's not C-A-L-L-E-R. Is it a clerical collar? Herbert was a priest. Herbert only wrote devotional poems, religious poems. He didn't write anything else, okay? Robert Herrick wrote devotional poems, religious poems. He also wrote some rather dirty poems that, I could bring into class. When I used to teach 17th century, I did, and students' eyes would go, oh my God, I can't believe he actually put that in print, talking about stalks and things crawling, won't go in it, okay? The collar. Notice it's a homophone. It can be C-A-L-L-E-R, God calling down. It can be collar, C-O-L-L-A-R, like a priest collar. What other kind of collar can it be? Heel. Exactly. And that's the child. That's the collar. Heel. The choke chain. And what does the dog do? If the dog's been trained, it'll sit immediately when you pull up on that chain. Okay? La Belle dans Sans Merci, 1057. Shoot, we're not going to get through all these today. 1057. That was actually on one of those videos that I posted over the weekend. So you can go back and watch that. But I do want to try to do Dover Beach very quickly, 674. Matthew Arnold. This is a poem about the loss of faith. All right? 3 stanzas. And it's almost painting an image for us. You've got a man and his lover in a hotel room looking over the English Channel, and on the other side of the English Channel are the coast of France. The sea is calm tonight. The tide is full. The moon lies fair upon the straits. On the French coast the light gleams and is gone. The cliffs of England stand glimmering and vast. Out in the tranquil bay, come to the window. Sweet is the night air. Only from the long line of spray where the sea meets the moon-blanched land, listen. You hear the grating roar of pebbles which the waves draw back and fling at their return up the high strand. Begin and cease and then again begin. This is 846 in the 10th edition. Begin again. With tremulous cadence slow, and bring the eternal note of sadness in. Sophocles long ago heard it on the Aegean. We've read Sophocles, okay? And it brought into his mind the turbid ebb and flow of human misery. We find also in the sound a thought, hearing it by this distant northern sea. The sea of faith was once, too, at the full, and round earth's shore lay like the folds of a bright girdle furled. But now I only hear its melancholy, long withdrawing roar, retreating to the breath of the night wind, down the vast edges drear, naked shingles of the world. Ah, love, let us be true to one another, for the world which seems to lie before us like a land of dreams, so various, so beautiful, so new, hath really neither joy, nor love, nor light, nor certitude, nor peace, nor help for pain. And we are here as on a darkling plain, swept with confused alarms of struggle and flight, where ignorant armies clash by night. That is an excellent kind of summary, from Arnold's point of view at least, of what happened in the mid to late 19th century with the complete rise and takeover by the Age of Enlightenment, the Age of Reason, and the decline of religious belief or faith. He's saying this is what happens with that decline. So, first stanza, we get the setting. The sea is calm. Notice the it's not boisterous, it's not storming, okay? And the speaker and the beloved are in a hotel room, and he says, listen, you hear that? And what do you hear when you go to the ocean? The tide. It comes in, the waves come in, they go out. This is on a beach with pebbles and rocks, not a sandy beach. And so you hear those rocks move up and go down, and they're like a grating sound. Okay? And he says that sound is an eternal note of sadness. He says Sophocles heard it, and it brought to his mind the turbid ebb and flow of human misery. How does Oedipus the king end? Count no man happy until he is dead. And the last, free of pain at last. Okay? So, the speaker then goes to, the sea of faith was once too at the full. So, the speaker uses the physical sea as an analogy for the sea of faith that once encompassed the world. That is, everybody had a belief system, a religious belief system, not a scientist or scientific one. All right? But now I only hear what? Its long, melancholy, withdrawing roar. Just as the sea makes a sound as it comes in and goes out, he hears the sea of faith withdrawing kind of make this roar, and the roar is dying as it goes out. Love, let us be true. So, let's be faithful to each other. Let's be loyal to each other. Why? For the world which seems, we've talked about that verb seem, okay, indicates a condition contrary to fact. The world which seems to lie before us like a land of dreams, so various, so beautiful, so new. It seems to be various. That is, like George Manley Hopkins's Pie Beauty, showing the varieties of God, so to speak. And it seems to be beautiful, and it seems to be new, like you wake up each day and it's a brand new world. What? The world that the speaker and the beloved inhabit hath really neither joy, nor love, nor light, nor certitude, nor peace, nor help for pain. What's the outlook on life there? Notice it begins, let's be true to one another. And yet we're told there is no certitude in this life. So how can you be true to one another if there is no such thing as truth? Because that certitude is another word for truth. It also means certainty. You can never be sure. The speaker is saying, essentially, life's a bitch, and then you die. Life sucks, and then you die. Notice, it seems to lie beautiful and all this kind of stuff, but there isn't any real joy. So what is the joy that we experience then? It's an illusion. There isn't any real love. So then what's left? Lust. There isn't any real light. So we're left in darkness. There isn't any real certitude or truth. In other words, everyone eventually will fail you. There isn't any real peace. It's just temporary. There have been calculations. Human history going back to the Romans, like 0 AD, up to today. I think the number is something like, there's only been 27 years where humanity has not been at war. Out of that 2022 years, okay? Nor help for pain. What is that, nor help for pain? No one's going to come rescue you. No one's going to come save you. There is no something else out there, the speaker is saying. And we are here as on a darkling plain. That is, we are here like when it is pitch black and you can't see your hand in front of yourself. swept with confused alarms of struggle and flight. What are the confused alarms of struggle and flight? Wars, armies. And what are those armies doing? They are ignorant armies clashing by night. Why are they ignorant? They're not knowing. Why? Because they're fighting in the darkness. He isn't talking about literal armies. He's talking about people who think they know the truth. It's implied religious warfare. One ideology fighting off against another one. Okay, we'll stop there. I'll put up a link to a video that covers Dover Beach, Dulce et Decorum, and the time of year that Mason Behold. It'll be like half an hour long probably. And I'll tell you where to start watching it. All right, that's all. Come on, brain. Quiz due tonight, 11:59. Final exam due Sunday night, 11:59. And included in the email I sent out this morning, course evaluations, if you want to do them, you have, I think you told me maybe like 4 o'clock tomorrow, something like that. I've been told to announce that because like 25 or 30% of across all my classes, people are doing them. Okay.
What was the time